Hey everyone, welcome back. You know we love to go deep on the stuff that really matters, and today we're diving into a book that's been making waves, The New Macho, a guide to remasculinity in a femme-dominant society.
Ooh, yeah, this one's going to be interesting.
Definitely. We're going to unpack the author's take on masculinity, societal shifts, all that good stuff.
And trust me, he's got some strong opinions about what's going on with men today.
Okay, so right off the bat, he starts with this personal story. He talks about feeling like a stranger in his own life. Like he grew up with this image of what a man should be.
Provider, protector, all that.
Exactly. But then, as society starts changing around him, he starts feeling this disconnect.
Like the rules of the game are changing, and nobody told him.
Yeah, and he really lays out this feeling of emasculation that we hear so much about these days. He even goes as far as saying that feminism, while starting with good intentions of equality, has kind of gone off the rails.
He sees it as demonizing men and masculinity now.
And he doesn't just stop there. He names names. He points fingers at education and the media as actively promoting what he calls anti-masculine ideas.
He even ties this into those scary statistics about rising suicide rates among men, the pressure to bottle up their emotion. He paints a pretty bleak picture, calling it a crisis of masculinity.
It's heavy stuff. And then he drops this bomb. He completely rejects the idea of toxic masculinity.
Whoa, hold on. He doesn't just reject it, he flips the whole script. He introduces this concept of toxic femininity as the real problem.
So instead of men being the problem, he's saying it's women.
Well, not women exactly. He's talking about certain behaviors, manipulative stuff that he says is often overlooked, even excused, because it's coming from women.
Give me an example. What kind of behaviors are we talking about?
He gets pretty specific. He talks about emotional manipulation, playing the victim, using sex as a weapon, all those things that can really mess with a guy's head.
And his argument is that society has this double standard. If a man does these things, it's toxic. But if a woman does them, it's no big deal.
Right, and that feeds into this larger point he makes about gender equality. He's skeptical, to say the least.
You mean he doesn't buy the whole equality thing?
He flat out says it's a myth.
Oh, okay. Strong words. I gotta know, what's his reasoning?
He says men and women are just fundamentally different biologically, psychologically, you name it. He talks about testosterone levels, differences in brain function, even historical family structures like polygyny, where a man had multiple wives.
Polygyny, that's a whole other conversation.
I know, right? But his point is that trying to force absolute equality ignores those natural differences, and it actually ends up creating problems. Like, we're trying to fit square pegs into round holes.
Oh, let's get into a topic I know is huge in the red pill world, family structure.
Yeah.
What's the author's take on how things are changing?
He is a huge believer in the traditional family unit. A father who provides, a mother who nurtures. That's what he sees as the ideal environment for raising kids.
Makes sense.
And he sees all these trends, rising divorce rates, more single mothers, as evidence that this traditional structure is under attack.
And he's pretty critical of policies like affirmative action and alimony laws. He sees them as part of this attack.
Absolutely. He sees a pattern of systemic bias against men in a lot of these policies. Like, society expects men to sacrifice more, but doesn't reward them equally. It's a pretty provocative argument.
It definitely is. And speaking of provocative, this is where things get really interesting for anyone who's skeptical about marriage. He goes all in, calls it a raw deal for men in today's world.
And he backs it up with personal stories, anecdotes about guys who've been burned financially and emotionally. He's basically saying that for many men, marriage is a trap.
And it's not just he questions the whole pressure on men to get married in the first place.
He challenges the whole marriage cure myth, even the idea of the biological clock for men.
He actually suggests that men are better off staying single.
Well, he phrases it as focusing on reclaiming their masculinity. It's like he's saying, figure yourself out first, then maybe think about marriage.
That's a pretty bold statement. So if he's saying men shouldn't necessarily rush into marriage, what does he think they should be focusing on?
He really emphasizes the importance of male friendships, strong support system. He says that for men, those bonds are just as important as romantic relationships.
Interesting. I can see how that ties into what he was saying about men feeling like they can't express their emotions openly.
Exactly. He sees male friendships as providing that safe space for vulnerability, for being yourself without judgment.
So we've covered a lot here. Masculation, toxic femininity, the challenges to the traditional family, even his take on marriage. Where do we go from here?
Welcome back, you guys. Last time we were talking about how this author really challenges the whole idea of gender equality.
Yeah, and he doesn't just kind of question it. He flat out calls it a dangerous myth.
Which is bold, but then he explains by saying, pushing for absolute equality ignores that men and women are different.
Okay, sure, everybody's different, but how is he backing that up?
Biology, He talks about testosterone, how our brains work differently. Even points to how families were structured throughout histories, like polygamy.
Whoa,
Yeah.
polygamy. Like one dude with a bunch of wives.
Exactly. He uses those examples to challenge our modern assumptions about family, the classic mom, dad, 2 kids setup.
So is he saying like the nuclear family isn't the right way?
Not necessarily. It's more like he's saying there have been other ways, successful ways, that acknowledge these differences between men and women. Trying to force everyone into the same mold, well, that might be where things go wrong.
I get that. So how does this all connect to his beef with policies like affirmative action? He did not hold back on those.
He sees them as prime examples of how this forced equality actually hurts men. Like affirmative action, he argues, can lead to less qualified people getting jobs just to fill quotas. And that creates resentment.
Yeah, nobody wants to feel like they got a job just because of their gender or race, not because they earned it.
Right. And then there's alimony, which he sees as totally unfair. He says it often leaves men financially ruined, even if they were the main breadwinner.
It's like he sees this pattern everywhere of men being expected to sacrifice more, provide more, but then not getting treated fairly in return.
Totally. And he even brings up the draft, selective service. Like, society's still ready to send men off to war, but are they getting equal rewards or respect in other areas of life? He doesn't think so.
It all feeds back into that war against fatherhood idea he keeps bringing up, right?
Absolutely. He thinks the system is biased against dads, especially when it comes to custody battles and child support.
Those stories are rough. He talks about fathers who are totally alienated from their kids, fighting tooth and nail just to see them.
And he doesn't just complain about it, he tells these fathers to become activists, fight for their rights.
Is that realistic, though? Like,
No.
can one guy actually change the whole system?
Well, I think it speaks to that feeling of powerlessness that a lot of men feel, like the system IS rigged against them and nobody's listening. So yeah, maybe it's a long shot, but he's saying don't just sit there and take it.
Okay, now, onto something a little lighter. Marriage. Just kidding, he's pretty harsh on that, too.
Oh yeah, raw deal was the term he used.
Yeah, straight up. Why so negative, though? What's his issue with marriage?
He argues that in today's world, it's just become super risky for men. Financially, emotionally, divorce rates are high, and he has all these stories of guys getting totally screwed over in settlements.
So it's like the risk outweighs the reward.
That's his view, yeah. He's also pushing back against all that pressure society puts on men to get hitched. Like that whole idea that you're not a real man until you have a wife and kids.
Plus the whole ticking biological clock thing.
He even questions that. Like, why is there all this pressure? Is it really beneficial for men? Or are we just buying into outdated beliefs? He's really making you think about it, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
So if he's not big on marriage, what does he suggest men do instead? Just like stay single forever?
Not exactly. It's more about focusing on yourself first. Reclaiming your masculinity, as he puts it. Build strong friendship, find what fulfills you as a man, then maybe think about marriage if it makes sense.
Interesting approach.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to what he was saying about those strong male bonds being essential. Like guys need other guys in their lives.
Exactly. And not just to, drink beer and watch football. He sees those friendships as crucial for men's mental health, a space to be vulnerable, to get support.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, we talk about women needing their girl time, so why not the same for guys?
Right. And it also ties into his worries about male spaces kind of disappearing in today's world. He really goes there in the book, talks about how men need these spaces.
What does he mean by male space? Like, what are we talking about here?
Classic stuff. The gym, a guy's workshop, even just a man cave in the basement, places where men can hang out, let loose, be themselves without judgment.
Okay, I can see that. But is he saying those spaces are actually under attack?
Oh, he's sounding the alarm bells, for sure. He thinks there's a deliberate effort to erase those spaces, driven by what he calls Marxist feminism. It's a loaded term.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
He uses it to describe this ideology that he sees as wanting to totally dismantle traditional masculinity, basically reshapes society in a way that puts women on top.
Sounds intense.
It is. He sees it everywhere. From how men are shown in the media to pushing for gender-neutral language and policy. He even brings up changes in the military, women in combat roles now.
So he sees that as like the feminization of the military.
Exactly. And he doesn't think it's a good thing. He worries that we're blurring the lines between genders too much and that it ultimately hurts everyone, men and women alike.
And it's not just the military. He brings up art too, saying that male artists are getting pushed aside for women. It's like he sees this bias against men everywhere he looks.
It can get pretty intense, but his point is that men are losing their footing in the world. And that has consequence. Like, if we don't value what men bring to the table, what happens to society?
Big questions. So we've got this war on fatherhood, this attack on male spaces, even this Marxist feminism thing he keeps bringing up. It's a lot to take in.
It is, but that's what makes these deep dives so interesting, right? We're exploring ideas that make us uncomfortable, that challenge our assumptions.
All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive. We've been exploring this book, The New Macho, and things are about to get even more intense.
Yeah, he really goes there in this last section, talking anti-natalism, the whole social media landscape, and his take on how masculinity has been shaped over centuries.
Anti-natalism, that's like the belief that having kids is morally wrong, right? Seems kind of out there, but the author seems pretty concerned about it.
He is. And you know how he's been talking about this war on fatherhood? Well, he sees antinatalism as part of that attack. It's like the ultimate rejection of that traditional role of being a dad, passing on your legacy and all that.
So, like, it undermines the whole idea of men as creators and builders.
Exactly. He even brings up biology, saying it goes against men's natural drive to procreate. It's like he's saying guys are being convinced to turn against their own nature.
Wow, that's heavy stuff. But then he gets into social media, and that's something I think a lot of guys can relate to. Like, how is that whole online world messing with our masculinity?
He doesn't hold back. He talks about addiction, how it can totally wreck your self-esteem, all those unrealistic expectations you see online. He even brings up incels, those guys who've just given up on relationships altogether.
It's a dark side of the internet, for sure. And he connects it back to emasculation, right?
Yeah.
Like social media portraying men in this negative light, reinforcing stereotypes.
Oh, yeah. It's like everything you see online is telling you that being a man is a bad thing. But he offers a solution, this idea of red pilling.
Red pilling. I've heard that term thrown around, but what does it actually mean in this context?
It's like waking up to the ways you're being manipulated. You start seeing the world differently, questioning the narratives you're being fed. He's saying, don't just passively be critical. Take control of your own story.
It's like taking the red pill in the Matrix, right? You see reality for what it is.
Exactly. He's calling for a digital rebellion, basically. Reject the algorithms, ditch the trends, and figure out what it really means to be a man on your own terms.
I dig it. But before we wrap things up, I want to touch on one more thing he brings up. He spends a good chunk of the book talking about the historical roots of all this. Like, this whole emasculation thing isn't new, right?
Not at all. He traces it back to the Industrial Revolution, actually. He argues that before that, men were mostly farmers, valued for their physical strength and skill. But then, with factories and machines, that all changed.
So men became less important.
In a way, yeah. They became cogs in the machine, replaceable. He's saying that shift really messed with men's sense of purpose and identity, and we're still dealing with the fallout today.
Interesting. And he talks about marriage too, right? How it's evolved over time.
He does. He points out how it used to be more patriarchal, husband in charge. And while he sees some positives in the shift to a more equal partnership, he also thinks it contributed to men losing some of their traditional power and authority.
It's like as women gained more rights, men kind of lost their place a bit.
That's how he sees it. And he ties it back to the rise of feminism and the men's rights movement. Both are trying to figure out what it means to be a man or a woman in this new world.
It's a lot to think about. So we've covered a ton of ground here, from toxic femininity to the challenges of modern marriage to this whole historical perspective on emasculation. It's been quite a journey.
It has. The New Macho is definitely a book that pushes buttons and makes you question everything you thought you knew.
Whether you agree with the author or not, he's making some valid points about the pressures men face today. And he offers some interesting solutions too.
Absolutely. And if you're interested in exploring these ideas further, you can grab a copy of The New Macho on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books. It's a deep dive that might just change your perspective on the world.
Great advice. And to everyone listening, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep the conversation going. We're all in this together, trying to navigate what it means to be a man in the 21st century.